Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. This podcast is dedicated to EAS employees of the U.S. Postal Service and members of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. So, pour yourself a cup of coffee and join us for today's episode. And now, here's your host, Robert Wakefield.
Good morning, Branch 32, and good morning to our EAS friends across the country. Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. I'm your host, Robert Wakefield, president of Branch 32. Thank you. Thank you so very much. All right, it's great to have you all here, so let's go ahead and get ready to pour that first cup. Make a difference this January 30th. Join us at the Nashville Post Office Credit Union's Blood Drive from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Our mission, people helping people, is at the heart of this event. Each donation you make can save lives and strengthen our community. Not only will you have a chance to be a hero, but by signing up and donating, you'll also be entered into a special drawing for a Yeti cooler. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union. People helping people since 1925. And for our first cup today, this is going to be the last podcast of our series called Taking Care of Yourself. And I thought it was a timely topic to talk about since we were just going through peak. And the last thing we normally do during the peak season is take care of ourselves. Let's just be honest. It's the last thing that we do. So these were all designed as reminders of taking care of yourself and the importance of that. I wanted to know some feedback. Give me some thoughts on what you thought about this series. Did you like it? What did I leave out? Send those comments to SaturdayCupOfJoe@gmail.com. And as has been our practice, we go back and we review the previous podcast, the topics that we talked about. And the first one we did was taking your lunch and how important that is. And I'm still getting reports of people not taking their lunch. I don't get it. You're not getting paid. If you're on auto clock rings, which many of you are, they deduct an hour for your lunch. Well, I've got to be on a telecon, they say. Well, you take it at another time, but take your lunch. Do it. You're not getting paid. We also talked about stress and the role that it plays in our life and the role that stress plays, especially during peak season. Another previous topic that we talked about in this series was being paid properly and how important that is. As my good friend Tim Bad Mama Jamma Ford once said, you don't work for the Postal Service, you work for money. And that is so true. And then we piggybacked on that being paid properly to been talking about tea time and how you're supposed to get that under certain regulations under the ELM. And we talked about the 3 A's to be sure you get the tea time that you deserve. You make your manager aware of it, you make your manager acknowledge it, and then you have your manager approve it so that there's no questions about tea time. And then last time we talked about work's equal partner, and that was rest. And here's a fascinating thing. If you go to the USPS EAP website right now and click on their monthly focus, it's all about rest. They have all kinds of articles there and things that you can read. And that is not, I don't know how we plan that out, but it works out perfect. So go in there and check out the EAP website under their monthly focus. So that's a review of what we talked about. And now today's topic, I want to talk about keeping your cool in the workplace. Oh my goodness. Sometimes that's tough to do. You know, as EAS employees, we have tremendous pressures on all sides. We have maybe an MPU, or we have an MDO, or we have to deal with unions, and we mix that all up. It's like a big soup. You're just dumping all this stuff in. And then you've got employees that are difficult to deal with, and then you have customers that are difficult to deal with. And sometimes the pressures just get to you, and you lose your cool. Well, I have to admit that I have done that. I have lost my cool before. And I don't really remember yelling too much at employees. I do remember one instance where I lost it with a customer. And since I'm no longer an active employee of the Postal Service, since I'm retired, I'll tell this story. And it's something I'm not really proud of, but it happened. Back in the day, when delivery confirmation was first getting started, they would pair up the scanners with a phone, a little cell phone. You remember that? And it would transmit data that way. Well, it didn't have all the details in it like we have today. It didn't have the geofencing and all that. So what it did have was just, it was delivered. And that's all we knew. So this customer one time called Consumer Affairs. She was a customer of mine. She didn't call my office first. She called Consumer Affairs. Consumer Affairs called me and says, your carrier didn't deliver a package today. I said, well, let me find out. I'll find out. I'll give him a call and we'll see what happened. So I gave him a call. He said, well, I did deliver the package today. I said, oh, really? And he said, yes. I said, okay. That's all I need to know. So I called back Consumer Affairs and said, oh, it's been delivered. And she got a little snotty with me and she says, no, it hasn't. And I said, you know what? If my carrier says it's been delivered, I don't have to go back behind him and look for it. Well, the Consumer Affairs manager just insisted that it was not delivered. And so then the customer called me and wanted to know where the package was. And I said, it's in your mailbox. She said, I just went to the mailbox and there were only a few letters in there. And I said, well, it's there. And hung up the phone. Consumer Affairs calls me again and says, you still have not checked on that package for me. She has called me back. I said, listen here. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to meet the carrier out there. And I'm going to prove to her that package was in the mailbox. So I called the carrier. I said, meet me at the house. And I want you to show me exactly where you put it. So he pulls up in the LLV. Jumps out of the LLV while it's still running. I screamed at him and said, get back in the vehicle. The last thing we need is a runaway. Just show me where you delivered it. And so he was kind about it. He didn't get mad. He pointed to where it was. The customer was standing in her front door. She was standing at the front door talking to Consumer Affairs while I was standing at the mailbox. Now here's where I lost it. I opened the mailbox, and there was the package, just like we said. And what I'd like for you to do right now, I would like for you to picture the Statue of Liberty, how she holds that torch up high, proudly proclaiming freedom for everyone. I had a Statue of Liberty moment. I raised that package up to my head with my right hand, and I shouted, here it is, just like we said. And I walked it up to her house, and I handed it to her. She says, well, I picked up my mail, and it wasn't in there. I said, ma'am, you didn't have any mail today. That was yesterday's mail. You got the package today, just like I said, and you didn't go back to your mailbox. So, I'm furious. I get back to the post office. I call that Consumer Affairs person, and I said, well, it was in the mailbox, just like we said. She said, well, did the customer call in to apologize? I said, what do you think? Absolutely not. There's no apologies here. But I completely lost it that day with that customer. And I'm not bragging about that because that was not a good moment for me. But, standing out there like the Statue of Liberty was a humorous sight to see. So I said, well, what do you do when you lose your cool? What are some strategies that you can use in anger management type things that'll keep you from losing your cool? Well, Elizabeth Lohman is a freelance writer, and she wrote in 2020, she wrote an article about 5 ways in which you can keep your cool in the workplace. And the first thing that she mentions is just breathe. We've heard that before, hadn't we? Just stop, count to 10, and take a deep breath. Now, there's a point to doing this. It's not going to remove the stress, she says, but it buys you a little bit of time to put things in perspective, to cool down, to bite your tongue before you say something you may regret. So that's the first thing that she offers. The second point she offers is write it down, but don't send it out. That's a great idea. Sometimes you can get an emotional release just as simple by just writing it down. But whatever you do, don't mail it. Don't send it in an email. You tear it up. You delete the email. Just vent on the email if you're going to put it in writing. But please shred it or permanently delete it forever. You don't need to. That does not need to fall in the wrong hands. The third thing she suggested was vent to a trusted colleague. How many times did I do that? That's the beauty of being in NAPS. I had NAPS members that we would go through the same thing and we could call each other and just let each other have it and vent with each other. It was fantastic. The fourth thing that she suggests is call a loved one. Call your spouse. Just talk to them. Do something pleasant in your life. Get something pleasant in your life that will take your mind off of it. And the fifth thing she mentions is take a break. Just get away from the situation for a minute. Take your lunch. Go grab you a cup of coffee. Go outside and walk around a little bit. Leave your phone and your emails behind. Just blow off some steam and relax. Take a break. So there are some strategies that you can use that will help you keep your cool in the workplace. They would have been real handy the day I became the Statue of Liberty. I'll just tell you that right now. All right. Let's go ahead and let's get some more coffee here. Let's pour that second cup. This March the 30th, join us in celebrating a century of trust and a century of service. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union is hosting its 100th annual meeting celebration at the luxurious Sonesta Hotel from 4:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Mark your calendars for a night of history, festivities, and fun. For more details and updates, like and follow our Facebook page and be a part of this monumental milestone. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union, people helping people since 1925. And for our second cup today, I want to remind all of us that the membership blitz is still going on nationwide. It's an effort to have over 30,000 EAS employees members of NAPS. It's going on from now until the end of February. This blitz is for all branches across the country. It's for every one of us to sign up new members to get them to join this fabulous, fabulous organization. It's NAPS is the only management association that can represent all EAS, unlike the other management association. So if you're a postmaster and you know some postmasters that are not in NAPS, get them signed up. If you're a supervisor working with other supervisors or you have friends, get them signed up. And when you do that between now and the end of February, NAPS headquarters is going to send you $50 for being their sponsor. So it's a great time for the membership blitz to take place, and it's an important time for each one of us to sign up members to get them in our organization. And we're shooting to get over 30,000 in NAPS. We're very, very close. So let's all do our part, and let's sign up the next NAPS member. So thanks for listening to today's Saturday Cup of Joe podcast presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. And you know what to do. I've said it on every podcast. Share this podcast with all of your EAS friends, NAPS members wherever they may be. We want this podcast to grow and grow and grow. Not too long ago, I asked you to tell me which branch you were from, and I heard from one of you, D. Perez, from Branch 202, Long Island, New York. He let me know that he's listening to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. What about you? Send me what branch you're from and let me know. I'd love to hear from you. So, that's going to be it for the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. I'm Robert Wakefield, and remember, every great weekend starts with a great cup of Joe. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. Please note that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of Robert Wakefield and do not necessarily reflect the views of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. We welcome your questions and comments, so send those to SaturdayCupOfJoe@gmail.com.